Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to former biped. That's basically what I am, is a former biped. I used to walk on 2 feet. Now I need things to help me get around. I'll get back to that later. And I was going to do this channel about, originally my idea was called Living with Neuropathy. But just in terms of health, I've got so many other things to talk about. And then also what's important to me and how that affects what I want to do with my life. For instance, art. Most of my life, I have made things that could be called art. I've made a lot of other things, but a lot of it can be called, useful things, that is, but a lot of it could be called art. And health impacts that so much. And I've had so much trouble with that. So I want to talk about that. And that's why I have a couple of tablets with me. I have my iPad Air, which I use all the time, pretty much live on it. And I've got an inexpensive Samsung that I got just for using art apps. And art apps is something that I have been exploring for several months, actually the last couple of years, but especially in the last, well, since summer 2025, I've been really digging into them. I've tried over 50 different apps that could be used for making art in one form or another. So I'm going to talk about that a lot, and I'll get into that in a minute too. And then, I read all the time. I have, over the last 50 plus years, I've probably averaged at least 2 books a week. So 5,000, 6,000 books that I've read since the mid-70s, probably a lot more than that. In the last 10 years, off and on, I've averaged more like 3 to 5 books a week. It depends on what else I'm doing and how conscious I am and so on. What else? Movies. I got movies all over. I probably won't talk much about books or movies. Reviews. I'm not going to do reviews. So I'm going to come back here in a second. Okay, I'm going to see if I can actually film things with my iPad. I have very unsteady hands. Well, it's an adventure, filming things, shooting photos, anything. When I take pictures all the time of the world that interests me. It's an interesting world. Not always people. I don't entirely like people. But I don't like taking pictures of them. That seems rude. But I take pictures if I get out for a walk. I haven't been getting out for a walk because my health is so bad. And I will talk about that, hopefully not too much, but the bad health, I mean. But I will talk about that. But my hands are so unsteady, and if I'm out for a walk or anything standing up, if I stand up and hold up my camera, I'm likely to tip over. Actually, anytime I stand up, even with the aid of a walker, I am likely to tip over. It's an adventure. So I've got my iPad, and I am taking a picture of the phone that's filming me. That's all I'm using now is Apple products. But I'm going to take some shots of my room. I have shelving that I've made, LPs, books, videos. Not very good quality image here. Cassettes. Okay, most of those cassettes that you can see are recordings of my own stuff that I did, and I'll talk about that. I've been recording for 30 years. We'll be generous and call it music and poetry, but we don't. It's whatever. And here you can see I have a walker, even for in the house. That pouch on the side comes in really handy for getting around with a cup of water and my tablet and so on. But I've got lots of videos. And over here, what's interesting, flap, still not very handy with that. Way up at the top, I've got my Batman mask. Well, it's a helmet, actually. Pressed helmet, plastic helmet that I got in the mid-'60s when the Batman TV show was on. I was like, what, fourth grade or something. Other things here, none of this is all that interesting or important. A lot of tools, okay, toys. I have IKEA stuff, a little bit of IKEA stuff to help me with. But like all this shelving and stuff up on that rack is mailing tubes, which I've used as resonators, among other things. So they're kind of like instruments of a sort. More shelving, lots of books. This is almost all, well, philosophy and poetry. And I've got a Fender Stratocaster that is just for artwork. A lot of stuff, and I'll come around. Yep, more IKEA shelving or drawers. Around the window, I've got photos of almost all of them are writers. Of course, the Earth. But I don't know if you can barely make it out there. Is between Jim Morrison and Emily Dickinson is Aldous Huxley. I'll get back to that. That's hand drawn. That's not a purchase postcard. I'll talk a lot about my drawing, somewhat about what I used to do, but mostly I'm going to focus on what I'm trying to do now. I find the present and what I'm doing much more interesting than the past. Unlike a lot of people, I don't spend a lot of time living in the past. I didn't enjoy it at the time, and I certainly don't enjoy reminiscing. And, for all that you hear about classic rock and all that rubbish, how great TV was back in the 60s and 70s and so on, it wasn't. It really wasn't. Before I started school, I was, 2 years old when Twilight Zone and Rocky and Bullwinkle started to air. I don't remember that much. I was in first grade, so the 63, 64 school year, they went off the air. And that was like one of the high points of TV for any era. But on the whole, we had crappy television. Well, Batman was cool, okay. Batman was great. But here I have more. A broken radiator I found somewhere. It's nice artwork and part of a couch up there. But more shelving, some more books. You can't really make it out. That's a microphone. Heil Sound PR40. It's a really nice mic. Works well with my voice. What I am using. Anyway. Here's like one of the MIDI keyboards. That's Nectar. Forgot what model it is. But I've done a lot of audio, as I said, and more. If we can get back here. Yes, Heil Sound. No, that's, I'm wearing it on my shirt too. Hollyland Lark M2. I really recommend those. They're not as, they don't sound as good as the Heil Sound, but they are, compared to the other small, like really small lapel mics, Rode and DJI make really good ones. I have liked the sound of the Hollyland better, and it's cheaper. They work really well. So anyway, a lot of, almost everything around me is, I've made shelves. I make things. Our house is full of shelves that I've made. I made a few other things out in the yard and whatnot, but mostly indoors. I'm an indoor person for the most part. And I'm going to make sure the microphone is on my iPad, and I'm going to start doing a screen recording of my iPad. And what we see here, this page is all art apps. Everything. I've tried over 50, as I've said. And right now, it's just kind of, this is the second page. These aren't as good of apps. But what I've got, I just keep trying them, and it's a little bit like shiny object syndrome. There are other names for it. I like that one. I like Jeremy the Crow and The Secret of Nim. I like sparklies. But on the whole, I don't get quite carried away with it. You know, it's like, oh, my precious. That sort of thing. Okay, not quite. I usually only talk to my food like that. But I've got all these art apps, and what this page has is like from the Affinity products up through Ibis Paint. They're kind of rated in order of what I like. I think the Affinity apps are about the best, and partly it's because I have the only digital art I've done since about 1999. That's the only digital art I've done at all, really, but it's been in publishing software, Quark Express, InDesign, and in recent years, Affinity Publisher. And it's an amazing bit of software because they integrate, especially in Publisher, you see it. It's like the new app that they just released last fall. It's integrating the vector art from their designer app and pixel art from their photo app and bring it all in, and then the publishing app for layout. And they are all, you have one document, and you can go between software studios, basically. And that makes it so powerful and easy to use. But they're also really, really good apps. And I'll talk about those somewhat at some time, I hope. What I'm tentatively thinking of doing on this channel is I'm not fit to do a tutorial. I don't know these apps well enough. I can't do a tutorial. And I think reviews are stupid. They're not as bad as unless somebody really, really knows a lot about the apps and the hardware and all that. I don't think, I just have nothing to offer as far as reviews, but I can go through an app like a walkthrough and just kind of show what every tool is, what you can use it for. And it'll help me learn the apps, and it might also help you learn the apps. And some of these, they have no online resources or anything, you know, like there aren't manuals, there aren't tutorials, there aren't reference guides or anything. And that will help. And what you see here are a couple of, if I can get this open. I'm trying to get my Samsung open. Tablet's loading up. But what you can see are a couple of gaps in the app. Oh, pardon me. Got to take a break there, so so I could log into my Samsung tablet. It's an S6 Lite 2024 model. It's kind of out of date. It's very slow, sluggish. But the list price was $330, and I got it last fall for right before Thanksgiving for $160. And I've got an iPad. I use my iPad Air, also a 2024 model, all the time. But I wanted to explore, first of all, the Android environment, but specifically I wanted to try some apps that are only available on Android. For instance, Krita. I was disappointed with Krita because it's just a computer program that's been slightly modified to work on a tablet. So it's, they made a few concessions to the touchscreen environment. On the whole, I don't like it. And then there are a couple of others, like Infinite Design and Vector Ink. Those are vector graphics that are not available on for Apple. So if you look at this page here on my iPad, what's missing between Font Self and High Paint is Krita. It's a really good app. It's really good software. Krita is. I just don't like it because it's not well adapted to mobile. And then below Ibis Paint, there are two blank spots. That would be those two vector programs. There aren't, I think, for like graphic design and vector art, Apple is they're better options. The main thing I like about Apple is that there are so many apps out there. People have developed it. I mean, Procreate, people buy iPads just to work on Procreate, just to use that software. And it's good software. It's not my favorite, but it's really good software. And there isn't that much on Android that's exclusively Android, and it isn't the best of the best to me. But there are some really good apps. I mean, Clip Studio Paint, which I also don't like. Again, because it's poorly adapted to the touchscreen compared to some of these other programs. I mean, like Procreate was designed just for an iPad, and several of these others are either designed for it or really, really modified. Like the Affinity software has been modified so much compared to the computer program to work with a touchscreen. It's fabulous software. Anyway, that I like the Android. I like it. I think it's really good software. And I don't know if you can see this, I got a different pencil, that yellow stripy thing. That's a Stettler Norris Classic, because I had trouble holding on to the S Pen. And I'll talk a lot in the long run about my troubles with the S Pen. And, well, my troubles with my hands. God, I'm just kind of babbling. My trouble with my hands holding things, and that's why I'm working on tablets. A brush, a stylus, anything, a fork, it has a tendency to fall out of my hand. It could just start sliding out that way. And the S Pen is so short, it's like using a Bic ballpoint. And actually, it's almost the exact same size and weight and all that. But both of them have a tendency to just slide right out of my hand. Or if I'm writing, it'll push up because I don't know if I'm holding on to it tightly enough. So that's always a problem. And so I'll talk a lot about that stuff. Hopefully not so that I'm so boring, but I will talk about that a lot. And I've got the second page has got some apps that are pretty stinky. They don't work, but most of them are really good. I mean, there's so much good software for mobile devices these days, especially for tablets. I've been exploring it, and I want to keep going with that. And let me see if I can get into a couple of sites now. I said I've been recording. So 30 years ago, March 1996, I bought a 4-track cassette recorder, and it's got a built-in mixer and all that stuff. So I started recording my own work, and mainly I wanted to do my poetry, and we'll be polite and call it poetry. It's a lot of gibberish. But I wanted to do kind of like dramatic monologues, treat them as, if you've ever heard, like, let's say Robert Browning, he wrote dramatic monologues in Baudelaire's sonnets. Flowers of Evil, almost all that is written as a soliloquy or dramatic monologue. And that's kind of how I wanted to do it. So that it wasn't just like some sort, I don't know if you've ever heard an English teacher reading poetry and it's like, what are they doing? This is just, if you do it like it's part of a play, it sounds a little bit more natural. And that's, it's like not a sermon, it's not a speech, it's somebody talking to you. And that's how I wanted to do my poetry. So I started recording my poetry, and I wanted to do it with sounds. To some extent, I wanted to do it with music, but I've been mostly inspired by, if you look around me, I've got LPs all over the place. I've got CDs. I've got thousands, like over 5,000 albums, digitized, everything. And I listen to mainstream music, rock and whatnot, but I don't consider it that inspiring. I like music from around the world, but even that, like more traditionally based, some cool sounds. I like that, especially when it gets into rhythm. Western music is not as interesting with the rhythm, except what's come through Africa, like through blues and jazz. Europeans are just kind of rhythmically dull. The tradition. That's an overstatement, because actually the folk music has some interesting stuff too. But I wanted to get into doing like found sounds and odd instruments. So like I was talking about, I have mailing tubes that I have used as resonators, and I would just kind of like talk through them, and I didn't have a reverb unit, and it would kind of do like a reverb tunnel. Like, I have a guitar. I was never a musician. Could play a few chords, a few notes here and there. Could kind of make something. Might be able to tell what the tune is if I could play the melody, but a couple of bars of it. But man, it's fun to use it for noise. I like making noise, so I used it a lot for making noise. And likewise, I worked with loops for quite a few years in Acid Pro software. I made loops, and I never felt comfortable with that because it was too much like hiring a professional musician and let's play music. And I just wanted to make sounds. I wanted something more ambient. So I have a tendency over the years, I've kind of gotten into what I wanted to do, which is more like an ambient drone, kind of a mixture of nature sounds and industrial sounds. So like especially a city person would know this, if you go out into the woods, it's not quiet. And there are all these weird buzzes and chirps in the wind and everything, just noises and creaks and groans. And likewise, if you go into a factory or something, or even just in your kitchen, the refrigerator is always droning on and pots and pans banging. And I just kind of wanted to bring something like that into as a background. So kind of drone and bang. I call it prattle and din. I have a blog here, a WordPress blog called Prattle and Din, where I talk about things. And you might think, oh, that's interesting. Somebody's talking about their creative process. I'll tell you right now, it's not interesting, because if you've ever been on something like a cross-country bus and you sit next to a person, or even just a few seats away from a person who just tells you about their whole family, their extended family, their in-laws extended families, and how old they are, and what work they do, and what illnesses they have, and how much money they make, and where they live, and how nice their house is, and on and on and on. That's kind of what I do in here. It's like okay, I'll talk about the creative process, but it's not very interesting. So no, I don't recommend it. And also, I write in a monotone. I mean, you may not think that's possible, but that's a great literary skill to have, is to write in a monotone, right? I mean, a lot of people try, or it seems that they do, but I've mastered it. So, and then this page here on my iPad is all music. And I don't really like working in DAWs, DAWs, digital audio workstations. I don't like it on my computer, although I work in Reaper, and Reaper is a really good program. On here, I've got Cubasis 3, and I just don't like using it. I don't feel that it loosens up a creative process. It's important for editing. You know, it's like using a video editor. You've recorded your stuff and then you arrange it. And DAWs are good for that. To me, they aren't good for the creative flow and the creative process. But I've got another app here called AUM. I think of it as AUM, but I don't. Nobody calls it that. AUM, and it's just basically a mixer, but it's very close to working with the 4-track. When I first started the 4-track cassette, it only takes a couple of minutes to set up. You plug in a few things, or in this case, you fill in a few slots. You have your synthesizers, your microphone or whatever coming in, some sample players or loops, or just playing a sound, and you can mix it and route it, and you can perform and all of that, and it records. It can record everything that you're doing. So it's a lot like using the 4-track, but if you want then to bring it into a DAW to arrange it, like I'm going to do, I have LumaFusion as a video editor, and when I'm done here, I will edit all of this and compile it and make the pieces fit. And that's what you can do with music in a DAW. So I might talk a little bit about doing music on an iPad or elsewhere. I don't know, though. I haven't been doing that much. Mostly I've been working with exploring the graphics programs. And I have graphics programs that run from, I've got Font Self, which is for designing fonts or typefaces and so on. It's really, really good software. I've got Mental Canvas and Feather are 3D apps. They're less sculpture or product design than most of the 3D apps are more like, CAD drawing for like architectures and designers might use, architects, product designs. And you can do some of that stuff in Feather, but Mental Canvas is more like setting up stages. You put in your drawings, they're flat drawings, but then they're in a three-dimensional space. And they're really cool. Set designers use that one. And I've got Concepts, which is a nice sketching program, really nice sketching program. But that's meant more for designers and architects and engineers and so on. And you can do some product design in that. I've got several animation apps here. Procreate Dreams, Toon Squid, and Stop Motion are all animation apps, and I haven't done much. I'm intimidated by them. I watch the videos about what people are doing with them. They're cool. They're really, really interesting. But I know nothing about animation. I hope to learn. And a lot of these drawing apps also have some basic animation, like Clip Studio Paint, you can get a little bit more involved, but like Adobe Fresco, Procreate, I don't know, there's several others, I think High Paint, they have some animation, but it's more like for doing GIFs and just little short, like 10-second, 20-second animations. Whereas these others are more like for doing I mean, you could do a movie, but I don't know. That's kind of daunting. People usually do that on a computer. But you could do a movie with, a short, like a 15-minute video or something. I've got things here that are specifically for painting, like Art Set is one that's entirely for painting. Art Studio Pro is primarily a painting app. PaintStorm, that's one that I really dislike because of the interface, because they did almost nothing to adapt to a touchscreen. But that's a painting app, and Art Rage is a painting app. And I'm going to show you a little bit. Just a second, I'm going to turn this off. Okay, since I've been talking about drawing and all that, I've opened up some of the things that I've put into my Photos app on my iPad. And I've got some drawings that, most of these right here on the screen, drawings and paintings, are things that I did back in the 80s, if not earlier. And what have we got here? Like, for instance, this is that Aldous Huxley. It's small. It's a postcard size. So the screen, what's on the screen here, is larger than the actual drawing. But you can see that it's cross-hatched. And basically, it's graphite with a little bit of India ink in the shadows and acrylic white for the highlights. Oops. Okay, this is a drawing that I did when I was in college, so probably about 1979, 78, 79. This was before I learned to crosshatch, and I started crosshatching these egg shapes. I have no idea what they mean, what they're there for, if they symbolize anything. But they're nice globules, and they appeared in a lot of my art way back then, especially. This right here is an anthropometer. I was just learning how to hatch with this one, so maybe 1981, 1982. And you can see on the dial there that it's called an anthropometer, but I came to call this character the Apostle of Need, and it turned up in a lot of my drawings over the years as kind of a representative of human nature and of America and whatnot, of all the things that, the Apostle of Need. It's just like being an empty pit and always need something to fill you up. Let's see. I'm going to show you some more detailed work. This is something that it's approximately 21 inches square. I worked on this for at least 4 years. The driver's license was new when I started it, and I kept working on it the license had expired before I finished it. And so it's 3 times life size. A Bic pen, some coins, old coins that I had. I gave them to one of my kids because they were collecting coins. Now the type, it's from an article in Rolling Stone about Echo and the Bunnymen, who back in the 80s were my favorite band, maybe. But I didn't know anything about type or fonts or any of that. So the letter forms are a little wonky. I tried to draw all of it accurately, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And since then, in the mid-'80s, a few years later, I started doing studied lithographic printing, pre-press and running a press and typesetting. And since then, I know a little bit about type. I did that. And then this one here is also with that story about Echo and the Bunnymen. And you can see a couple of things to point out is how tight my cross-hatching is. Like, compared to that, it almost starts to disappear. It's just very intense, very tiny, thousands and thousands and thousands of tiny strokes. I mean, that other one had about at least 200 hours. This one probably has about 80 hours labor in it. But I don't really stick with realism. So like this photograph, if I did it realistically of that magazine article, it would be halftone dots on here. But instead I did my cross hatching because I wanted the picture. Very inconsistent. I have a lot of problems. I just don't, not very professional. I've never been professional. I've had a couple of exhibits in Duluth at the Tweed Museum at UMD and at the Duluth Art Institute, at the Depot. And if I can find it here, don't have my reading glasses on. Oh, here we go. This one, probably about 1979, 78, 79, I had a drawing class. And we were sent, I think it was spring of 79. So we were just sent out in the world, draw something like inside of a building or outside of buildings, essentially urban sketching. And I hate urban sketching. I'm going to try it this year, I hope, if I'm well enough to get out and about. But this is obviously before I learned to crosshatch, but I was doing all this inside the old train station in Duluth, the Depot. And there was a group of grade schoolers doing a field trip, and like a bunch of kids stood around me. You're a good drawer. And I'm thinking, no, actually I'm not. But to a third grader or fifth grader, whatever, I suppose that looks pretty good. Anyway, it's not awful as far as capturing the space. But I'll say more and show more about these over the years. I will show this one here is what's left of a self-portrait, my teeth. Probably the winter of 1983, 84, when I was still living in Duluth. And this is all I've salvaged, and I use it as like my logo. This is my logo. So I don't know if you noticed it on K. Prattle and Din, it's there as my logo. In Swamp Messiah, it's there as my logo. And I use it from time to time for that. I'll get into these more, but you can see here where I'm trying to do stuff on my iPad and Samsung. This is digital art here. And I went from that really precise, well, fairly precise technically. I had a good technique. Realistic type stuff. It's like, this is in a vector program. I think this is in Affinity Designer, and I don't know how to use vector drawings. I've since learned, but I don't know how to use vector art. And I had trouble even making a simple line. I mean, I went from doing something close to photorealism to can't even do stick figures. I had so many problems with it. And whereas this is one that I did after, this is a project from Affinity Revolution. That's a channel on YouTube. And Allie Anderson also has a website where she sells tutorials on, especially Affinity apps. I think that might be all she sells there, Affinity Revolution, and how to use photo and how to use, I think she's got some on Publisher. I don't really need those, but Designer and how you can do vector art. So I've been learning how to do that. And I will get into a little bit more of this stuff. These are really clumsy, crude. And I will probably be doing projects. I might talk about them, but mostly I think I'm going to be exploring the apps as I go. I'm wondering if I have more to say about any of this. I am trying to keep this kind of short, but like a more realistic introduction. So what I'm talking about is I think mostly will be health and and art and how they interact and the impact of health on art. and I will talk a lot about that, and I might talk about reading, what I'm reading or what's interesting or what caught my attention. Like right now, one of the books I'm reading is called "The Artists and the Scientists" or something like that. It's about paleo art. Peter Trussler and a couple of scientist friends, they've worked together for over 30 years doing art of ancient life forms, and it's fascinating, and I really like that. So I read a lot of science, history or history of science, and history in general, some political, contemporary events type stuff, not much. I tend to avoid that. Actually, the reason it took me so long to get going with this channel is because we had the 2024 election, and I would call it grief. I've been in mourning for this country, and I have a lot of. I don't entirely like the United States. It's got a lot of problems, like having an abusive alcoholic relative at times. Um, this country has done a lot of shitty stuff, nasty things over the centuries, but it's also my home. And we might very well see the end of democracy by the end of 2026. So I've been in grief, but I hope not to talk about politics on here, on this channel. I hope not to talk about religion on this channel. And if you need to know, I'm an atheist, for lack of a better word. I just doesn't mean anything to me. I lean most toward Buddhism and Taoism as far as useful philosophies. Um, I don't know what else to say, so I'll talk about those things. And if I get outside, I hope to get outside when the weather warms up. It's April in St. Paul. Um, and we should be getting more warm weather soon, but I might not be able to enjoy it because right now I can barely get down a flight of stairs and back up. Um, so we'll see. I'm trying to build some muscle back up. I'm taking a hormone treatment of androgen suppressors and blockers, and the blockers, I think it's the androgen blocker that is destroying my muscles. I wasn't that strong to start with. So anyway, I've got a lot to talk about. I think I always have a lot to talk about, but whether or not anybody ever wants to hear it is a whole other thing. Just because I'm kind of monotonous. So I don't know what to expect. If you like this video, come back for more. I don't have much of a schedule planned. Actually, I don't have any schedule planned because I don't know whether I'll be up for doing anything. But I would say at most twice a month. I may have mentioned that already. So I'm not going to tell you to like and subscribe my channel because I don't think it's ever going to be popular enough for it to matter. I don't need anybody to build my ego. I doubt that I'll ever have enough subscribers or views to make any money off of this. So, but if you like other channels, like and subscribe, because some of those people, a lot of those people are trying to make a living, or at least supplement their living with their YouTube channels. They're serious about it. They're trying to make it a professional thing. And I'm just, like everything I've done outside of my day job, and I've worked crappy day jobs, anything outside of my day job is just, I'm doing it because I'm curious. I want to learn things. I want to see things. I want to do things. And that's kind of what this channel, I hope, will be about. Oh, by the way, I'm nobody. Bye.